right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Archetype Challenge. Music down. Some medieval music there. Didgeridoo. I'll get it. Didgeridoo. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome. My name is Sean Murphy. I hope you're doing amazing. We're going to have a little conversation here about the archetypes. And what's important to understand about the archetypes is that we have all of them, right? If you've ever taken a personality test, you've got the 4 personalities, right? The red, the green, the blue, or you're an elephant or a guppy or a tiger or a sparrow or an eagle. These are what Carl Jung called these personalities. And we have all of them. And one of the things I want you to become aware of is that if you are not using them, if you are not aware of them, you're using them. If you're not aware of them, you're going to experience some struggle. And this struggle causes some pain and suffering. And you just don't know what you're doing. You don't know why you're there. You don't know why you're stuck. You don't know what's keeping you from reaching your next levels of success. Well, today I hope to give you an insight. I'm going to start today. Today will be about the disempowered versions of the 4 main archetypes, right? If you look behind me, you'll see that there's the warrior, the magician, your lover, your sovereign. And one of the things to understand is about these archetypes is that not only do you have the 4 primary ones, and what I mean by primary ones is that usually it relates to the gender that you are. Does that make sense? So if my bride, Michelle, I would say, you're speaking from your sovereign. She would say, oh, that's my queen, right? Because that's her primary gender for her. And she also has a male version, which, if you know Michelle at all, sometimes pops up. I have my king, sovereign. I also have my female side. I'm accused a lot of times by guys, you act so much like a woman. And I say, thank you very much. The point is that we all have these versions, primary, secondaries. And then when we really start to dive into it, if you decide to join the class that I'm going to be teaching on how to activate your archetypes, you'll understand not just about the male and the female, you'll understand about the empowered and the disempowered version. You'll also understand about the primary combinations, right? Warrior primary, lover secondary, warrior primary, magician secondary, sovereign primary, lover secondary. So it's important to understand that we have this combination. You are all 4 of your archetypes. And in understanding that, sometimes each one takes its role from an empowered standpoint. Also, what happens is sometimes the disempowered shows up. So I want to start off with what it means to be of a disempowered state as your archetypes go. And then I'll go into each version so you can maybe have an insight to see how and why sometimes we are stuck because of our disempowered archetype. So with that being said, good morning, everybody. I appreciate you. Good morning, those of you on YouTube. I'm going to share a screen here for just a second. Let me make sure I get the right one. Let's see here. This is, okay, so let me share with you before I take you down the road of aggravation and agitation. Let me show you what it's like to live your life in an empowered archetypal state. Okay, so I want to share that with you. Let me put this in presentation mode. Okay, and let's go over here to share screen. Screens here. I don't think there's any sound, but I'll share it just in case. So now you should be looking at empowered archetypes, a life in balance. And when all 4 types, right? So we talked about there's the sovereign, the warrior, the magician, the lover, and they function in harmony. What happens is that you have an understanding of how to build your, not only your life relationships, but it's also about your business relationships and how you actually are able to stay put in the discipline state and the persistence state. Does that make sense? So if we go on and let's take a look at what the daily purpose is. So you have a clear vision. So apparently Alexa thought I was talking about it. Alexa, stop. Technology, right? So you have a clear vision. You wake up with a sense of purpose. You decide that you are going to function in a way that you have a clear intention. That's the important part, is understanding the clear intention side of it. You have daily action steps. You do your gratitude in the morning. You do your clearly take actions. You do your Benjamin Franklin checklist where you put the little boxes next to items. You've ranked them A, B, C. A is the highest priority. B is a second priority. C is a hopefully it'd be nice if it gets done. You've listed all of these action items, and then you go through and you check them off diligently with continuous effort and focus. And then you feel in control. So you got to ask yourself, now this is you about you being very clear, you being very intentional with yourself, you being very focused on doing the things you want to do. If you're not feeling that, if today you woke up and you didn't check any of these 3 boxes from clear vision, intentional steps, and leadership, you probably have a disempowered archetype. And we're going to go into that. Daily life disciplined action flow. You meet your challenges, you maintain momentum, you take action. Sometimes you'll hear leaders talk about doing it in chunks, right? Doing it in 90-minute segments, in 30-minute segments, but totally focused, no distractions. If that happens, you're on target. You probably don't need this 2-day challenge. If you're not feeling focused, if you're not feeling like you can take action, you can break down large goals into small chunks. If you are not disciplined enough, you might have some challenges. And we're going to go into those just after this. This is what it would feel like with your life in total alignment with your dreams, your definite major purpose. You got all these things in place. Do you have meaningful connections? Do you enjoy deep relationships? Do you have gratitude for life's beauty? Do you have self-care? This is one of the big things for the female brain, is a lot of times if they do anything with self-care, it's the idea of being selfish. But if you're in tune and aligned, you understand the power of how good it feels and how good you can be as you take care of yourself and experience moments of pure pleasure alongside productivity. Does that make sense? Because that's the power of what we're talking about. When you are in alignment, and I think, at least in the world I operate in, there's a lot of people who are disenfranchised. There's a lot of people who are segmented in their life, and that they have some great moments, but there's too many not so great moments that balance, that offset what it is that they're doing. So remember, your idea to be creative. Wallace D. Wattles says in the book, Science of Getting Rich, it's not about doing certain things. It's about doing things in a certain way. And this certain way is the ability for you to be creative, to not say the words, when's it going to be my chance? When am I going to get a break? That's not being creative. It's not problem solving. It's not knowledge integration. You have so much experience in your role. When I work with people and help them get their archetypes in alignment, one of the first things I do is ask them to go create an evidence file. Right now, I guarantee you there's 500 things you've done amazingly well. If you're saying to yourself, 500 things I've done well, are you nuts? You don't know me. but there's not a chance I've done 500 things great. I promise you there is. I promise you, guarantee it. I bet you my paycheck, my income check, that you've got 500 good things you've done in your life. But see, when you become disempowered, when you become beaten up, when you become challenged, when you say, I'm not enough, you're not fully aware of those. So when we work together tomorrow, I'll show you some of the ways that your evidence file based upon your archetype. I'll show you the positive side of how life operates when your lover is in full bloom, when your magician is in full tilt, and your sovereign is controlling your kingdom, and your warrior is ready for the fight, not always fighting. But we'll talk about that in just a moment. Again, this is what happens when your archetypes, when you are an empowered version of yourself. Now, I want you to think about that for just a second. What would it mean as you become more and more empowered? When you say your words, your body follows. When you say your words to go do something, work out 30 minutes a day, drink a half a gallon of water a day, your 8 glasses of water a day, your body does not resist. See, that phenomenon is called neuroencoding. You give yourself a thought and your body says yes or no. Your body says yes or no. Imagine if you empowered your mind and your body to follow your dreams. So here's what visionary leadership looks like. You set goals, you achieve them. Short term, midterm, long term, you're on track with them. Each day you wake up, you know which part of the goal you're working on, the short term. This is what an empowered version of you looks like. You take responsibility. You know how to move yourself forward, and you have the skill set to be able to empower others to take their actions. I was taught by the father of public speaking, Bill Gove, we need to be more responsible to them and a lot less responsible for them. Now, if you're raising kids, you've got to be responsible for them. I get it. Too often in the side hustle business, people take on new members into their organization and feel they have to operate from the parent mode, they're my kids, I got to do for them mode. And that's exhausting. It literally is one of the biggest reasons why most people dislike the networking profession, is because they get exhausted having to take care of people. If they learned, A, how to empower themselves, allow themselves to be empowered, and then B, teach that empowerment, you would be amazed. And then balanced growth, right? Being able to maintain stability inside not only your family unit, but also your business unit. A lot of people enroll, they leave, enroll, they leave. Why? Because they haven't empowered them to an understanding of a balanced scenario. So, what is consistent action in your business? Imagine you're an empowered archetypal phenomenon. Your sovereign is working, your lover is working, your magician, your warrior. You have this drive to make the tough decisions when necessary. One of the biggest challenges is to know as you move forward, one of the biggest things that you're going to become very accustomed with as you move yourself forward in your desires, your wants, your wishes, is the simple fact that you are going to learn how to say no to the things that don't serve you. There's things you say yes to now because there's a feeling of wanting to be a part of something. Sometimes you don't need to be a part of everything. There's a balanced effort. You maintain equilibrium, meaning that you can still do family and do business. And the big thing it says there, recovery to prevent burnout. And then overcoming setbacks. And setbacks are when you are in empowered state, they're setups. And you know how to use them to bounce off, to ricochet off, to move forward, to expedite yourself to a new level. so that you can complete your challenges. This is an empowered state. So you're able to see things when you're not focusing on the things that are disruptive in your life. You're able to use some strategic thinking. You innovate solutions, you optimize systems. You've done this in the past. I can promise you, if you're watching this, you've operated at peak performance. Probably short term. It was a short-lived performance scenario. Does that make sense? So because you're empowered, people want to be around you. They want to be part of you. They want to learn from you. If people are not necessarily wanting to be in your energy orbit, there might be a scenario. You're either feeding into what they're currently in, or they're not getting from you what they need to help offset the state they're in. Does that make sense? So all of these things around business relationships and being able to create healthy boundaries and take responsibility and share the growth, most times, if we're from a lack standpoint, when we have the growth, sometimes we are just the ones that say, well, I did all of that. When you're empowered, my dad always used to say, any job can get done if it doesn't matter who gets the credit. From an empowered state, it doesn't matter. You're moving forward. You're reaching out. You're receiving new levels. You're dealing with conflict. You have this proactive presence. You're able to anticipate the needs of some people. It's kind of a cool thing. And the bonds strengthen. So all of that to say, as you move forward into your light and into your life, this is what an empowered state of archetypes feels like. Emotional availability. A lot of times we're not ready for things because we don't have the space for it. How many of you, if I were to ask you right now, are feeling a little bit of lack, excuse me, because you don't have space for this next thing? You're not sure how to let it sit into your life, fit into your life, to show up in your life. From an empowered state, you have space because you've said no to so many things that don't serve you. You do have space for the things that you can say yes to. Joyful moments, authentic love. How many of you have a very authentic relationship with your friends? You feel that? You know what I mean? When you say that these are somebody that I really care for, somebody that I want in my life, or are they just temporary acquaintances? This is what I'm sharing with you, is the possibility of the potential when all of your archetypes are empowered. So, navigate changes, elevate. It would seem like this theme continues with all of the good things that are happening. And if you're missing out on these, if you feel like there's not a support partner's personal development, that there's not this building relationships, if your relationships are not elevating, if they're not, they could also be deepening, a deeper connection, a deeper understanding, a deeper persuasion of being able to support each other. Does that make sense? Again, this is the empowered version of it. You got a balance, you have authentic connections, you're creating productivity. There's really not anything new here, but what is new is I want you to pay attention to, are you really feeling this? Because what we're going to do is, after this slide, is that we're going to go into the disempowered versions of the archetypes. Okay, so that you can start to feel a little bit more understanding, and maybe understand why you feel the way you do in certain aspects of life. So balanced archetypes, when the Sovereign, the Warrior, the Magician, and the Lover are working in harmony. Napoleon Hill talks about a mastermind. And what makes a mastermind key is that when the individuals who are part of it work in perfect harmony, they don't work in togetherness, they don't work in sometimesness, they don't work in that would be cool for you, but not for me. No, they work in perfect harmony. Now, you might be saying, Sean, wait a minute, I'm one person. My question to you is, are you really? Is there somebody in your life that makes you ecstatic ecstatic? Is there somebody in your life that makes you frustrated? Is there somebody in your life that you are longing to connect with, to see again, an old friend, one of your BFFs from high school, college, university? Each one of those emotional states is a different version of you. Think about it for just a moment. Give me a chance. If your state changes, if the things you do, the way you operate shifts because of somebody or something you're around, how are you in traffic? Are you somebody that when unexpected traffic shows up and you're running late, you lose your shiitake? That's a different version of you. All of this to say is that you are not working in harmony with yourself. Sadhguru says, in this moment, you get to choose joy or misery. When you are an empowered, harmonized set of archetypes, it'll be difficult for you to recognize anything as not being cool, as not being in your best version. So that's what it looks like to be empowered. So what I want to start with you is looking at the idea of we want to be in control. We want to be this one who takes care of ourselves. We want to be this one who is the one who moves forward. And one of the biggest challenges is that we have these 4 archetypes. And one of the archetypes that's pretty powerful that most people operate from a defensive mechanism, making sure we don't get hurt, is the warrior. The challenge is that the warrior is the one that's all about discipline. And if we're operating from the warrior standpoint, if we're operating from I'm in charge and I'm going to make sure I'm not hurt, I'm going to make sure that I'm not taken advantage of, I'm going to make sure that people around me aren't hurt, I want to defend them and make sure they're safe. This is not an uncommon place for parents to operate out of. Now, the challenge is when the parents start operating as warriors to each other. But let's not go there just yet. Let's talk about this warrior archetype and discipline and challenges and see if any of this kind of resonates with you. So let me put that in presentation mode, put this into share over here. Now, understand that the warrior is the fighter. If I were to ask you, when I work with people, if you decide to take the class on this, one of the first things we're going to do is identify the archetypes, and I'll ask you a couple of questions about them. Where do they live in your body? What are you talking about? Well, if I were to ask you right now, where would your warrior live? Where does this energy source? Because it's a part of you. Right? If I were to ask you, where does your lover live? Or where does your sovereign live, your king or queen? Or where does your magician live? Where does it reside? Where does the energy reside in your body? One of the first things people will usually say is sometimes their hands, right? Because that's a logical part of it. The warrior does the fighting. Some have said their legs or lower back. I want you to know this is a part of you. And the warrior embodies discipline and action, right? Go fight, show me the battle, point me in the direction, and away I go. The challenge is that if we're operating in a warrior mindset, why do we lack discipline? If we want to go fight for our dreams, if we want to go battle and overcome self-doubt and fear, isn't that a battle? Isn't that a fight? Then why do we lose the discipline? Sometimes we struggle with delay and self-pity when pursuing our goals. So what I want to share with you are the complexities of the warrior energy. So the biggest challenge with the disempowered warrior is their inner conflict. So imagine there's the warrior, the one that's got the shiny medal, and they're standing there and they're leading the charge of the cavalry, the horses, the tanks, whatever it is. They're the one at the front of the line. How many of you, I know I do, it's why I really enjoy teaching and sharing on the archetypes, is because these are conflicts that I experience. Maybe you don't experience it. Maybe you do. But one of the first ones is inner conflict. So there's the warrior and then there's the shadow warrior. And this shadow warrior turns inward, becoming self-destructive. We can often say, I'm ready to go. I've got my goals. I set my targets. I did my affirmations and I've got my goals set down. I've written them down. I read them twice a day. But what happens between the readings? See, the shadow warrior turns in and becomes self-destructive, leading to battle one's self instead of external challenges. How many of you listening to this know you know what to do? Then what keeps you from doing what you know that you know that you know what to do? There's an internal conflict there somewhere. And until we identify it, and the challenge with doing self-introspection, which is when I teach addiction to approval and mental toughness, we have to do some deep self-introspection. The challenge is that the self can't interview the self. Let me say that again. The self has a very difficult time interviewing the self, getting any real valid answers. So we talk about that. When I help you in the course to understand what it means to have an empowered warrior, you understand the extreme power you then have almost instantly. There's lack of purpose. If today you woke and didn't have your 3 big targets, or your DMP, as Napoleon Hill would call it, or definite chief aim, DMP, definite major purpose in place, you may have had some goals today. I've got the parent teachers conference to go to, or is school, what month are we in? Okay, yeah, school is back in. I get lost sometime. I've got a volunteer today. You've got some things that are time sensitive that you get done. My question is, what is the time sensitive thing for you to get done for you? So without a clear purpose, the warrior becomes aimless. There's that phrase, if you're a hammer, everything's a what? Everything's a nail. So this results in procrastination or avoidance, or even worse, wanting to wait to get it right. Could you imagine a battle plan to get it right? If a battle ensues and pops up on the Western Front, do you sit and go, well, okay, so let's put a plan together. The enemy is advancing. They're taking out things left and right, and you want to go put a perfect plan in. What happens by the time you get a perfect plan? It no longer works because the whole battle has changed. So this is what happens with loss of purpose. The other big challenge is overwhelm. Now, I don't know about you. I'll be 60 years old next year. On my next birthday, I'm in my 60th year now. Overwhelm and burnout are a real thing. And it's not uncommon to hear some youth, I say youth, 20 and 30-year-olds burning out because of their constant bombardment via social media, needing to perform, needing to produce, needing to excel, needing to get more followers, needing to fill in the blank. Too many responsibilities can lead to burnout. And the warrior may just add too much pressure, may collapse under pressure. As much as it is, how many of you watching this, listening to this, know all too well the pressure you've taken on so that others could win? Does that make sense? Some of us have just taken on way too many pressures, way too many things for our own good. And we keep thinking, I could do it. Well, I could do all of that. I could do one more thing. I could do one more thing. I could do one more thing. And then there's the straw that breaks the camel's back. So this is a disempowered warrior. The shadow warrior, fear of failure, addiction to approval, fear of success. How many of us have had that? I'll raise my hand. This fear of success. How could we fear success? It's because our old story has taken up too much space, right? Self-doubt erodes the warrior's confidence, hindering decisive action, responsibilities. Success can bring new responsibilities. Am I good enough? You know you're good enough. You've achieved great success before. You've done amazing things in the past. You've arrived at new levels. Where you're at right now is a new level than where you used to be. That makes sense? So understand that all of these things that exist in the disempowered warrior, we've got a handful of slides more to go. But this is a key component. I want you to see if any of these seem like they are a fit for you. Because in the course that I'm going to offer to you is the ability to empower that warrior without becoming the tyrant, right? So we're going to look at some of the personalities of what disempowered means. Loss of momentum, perceived powerlessness. A true warrior has power and able to step up and step into any moment. This is what we call victimhood. Oh my gosh, my team just left me. Oh my gosh, the economy just did this. Oh my gosh, the ports just closed down. Oh my gosh, my internet went out. Oh my gosh, fill in the blank. And then the other thing that happens with this disempowerment or victimhood is something we know as self-pity. How many of us, well, I shouldn't ask. I'm not going to ask. I'm going to say there are times where I have sat in pity, licking my wounds. It really didn't do a whole lot of good, did it? Not for me, it didn't. So we have, then something happens emotionally that causes us to break out of this. Now, remember, we're talking about the warrior version, the one that's supposed to be fighting for our dreams, fighting for our goals, fighting for our family, fighting for our legacy. And if we're struggling towards moving towards our dreams, we're not doing a whole lot of fighting. We're not being able to be strong enough to withstand the battles. And so therefore we wither and we sit and we wait until, Jim Rohn's favorite word, until the day we've had enough. Mark Twain said, quitting smoking is the easiest thing I've ever done. I must have done it at least 200 times. Right? What is it that you need to quit doing? To quit distracting yourself with? That for once and for all, today you mark the day saying, I am moving forward. You've just empowered your warrior. So things that keep us disconnected from our strength, that allow the warrior to be disempowered, is we forget our power to overcome things. This is where your evidence file comes in place. We question our abilities. Our discipline erodes, and we're no longer moving forward. We're sliding backwards. By the way, there is no sitting still, right? There's only forward or backwards. There's either living or dying. And then we start having these battles with ourselves. And what happens? What does it look like when we start to have these battles with ourselves? Well, that's neuroencoding. We start to get more headaches. We start to get stress in our shoulders. Our stomach gets upset. We get knots in our gut. We're not eating well. Our body just doesn't feel good. A lot of these are energetic challenges that we've created in our body. Unaddressed emotional wounds. Where can some of this stuff come from? Past failures. A lot of times when we want to step out on the edge, listen, I was in 7th grade and asked a girl to dance at the mixer, I guess they called them. We called them a mixer. Asked her to dance and she said no. What do you think the chances are I asked somebody out at the 8th grade mixer? How about asking somebody to go to prom? It was a highly emotional challenge that it was an unresolved experience that it hindered my progress with ever asking another girl out. Anybody understand that? Anybody know that feeling? So then, because the warrior is the one who's supposed to be out front, in charge, in the thick of things, unacknowledged fears sometimes have caused us to get paralyzed. We go into hiding, right? We don't physically get paralyzed, although I've had some people do that. Their body has shut down so much they could literally not move easily or effortlessly. Their back hurt so bad, their gut got locked up. Something happened of these emotional fears that can cause us to be paralyzed. Maybe there's a lack of healing in your life. Why am I bringing all this up? Why am I triggering all this? I'm not attempting to trigger it. I'm attempting to shine some light on it so maybe you know why you're stuck where you're stuck. And this is just the warrior. We're going to go through the other three as well, the sovereign, the magician, and the lover. Because each one of them have their own unique fall downs, blockages. So how do we reconnect with purpose? Well, we invoke the sovereign, align the warrior with a higher purpose. See, and this is the combination I was talking about before. So if you're the warrior sovereign, you're fighting to protect the kingdom. If you're the warrior lover, you're fighting to protect, make sure people's feelings aren't getting hurt and that there's love involved. If you're the warrior magician, you're not going to limit your ability to have creativity. You're fighting for your place to be a creativity. You're fighting for this place to be able to have new ideas, to get out of the stuckness that you're in. And then imagine, and I go into this more in the class, in the course, what if you are the male warrior, secondary female warrior? Imagine that combination. What if you're the female warrior with the secondary male warrior? You're understanding fighting with love and passion and understanding the big concept, but you also understand where you've got to draw the line. The male, female version, warrior, male warrior, female, secondary warrior, you know where the line is, yet you're going to do it with love and compassion. This making sense? So you're going to reconnect with purpose, ensure your goals are truly aligned with your deeper self. This takes introspection. The challenge is we're so busy being busy that we don't have time to not be busy, to unplug from our capability, to unplug enough from social media or outside distractions so that we can do some self-introspection. So what happens when we embrace emotional intelligence? EQ, how many of you have heard of EQ? We've heard of it. We know about it. Do we really work on developing it? So recognizing that are the emotions that are keeping the warrior stuck. Some of us, I'll speak to me, the emotion that kept me stuck for a very long time was the emotion of my mother. My mom was one of the most amazing human beings on the planet. Absolute love, laughter, brilliant, funny. She was just amazing. Yet there was one particular version of her that emotion kind of really strangled me. It was a python around my possibility. It didn't kill me. It didn't crush me. It just kept me from expanding. And once I acknowledged that, once I became aware of that, it was amazing how fast I grew in that particular area of my life. But the warrior wasn't willing to fight that because of the relationship. I don't know about you, but I used to get in trouble if I wanted to argue with my mother. So when I go to face my new challenges, sometimes those challenges were, how would I say it? Intense with the female version of it, intense with female energy. So it was a struggle for me to break that because I related it to my mom. But these are things I had to break through, things I got to understand and become aware of. How many of us nurture self-compassion to overcome our fears and failures? How many of us have fallen in love with, you know what, you did your best. Oh, it sucked to high heck and back. You got through it though. You made it through. Attaboy. We talk about on one of the calls I do, the morning calls, the Daily Awakening, a friend of mine, Joseph McClendon III, who teaches neuroencoding, talks about JM3ing yourself, giving yourself a little pat on the back, the things that you've gotten through. Have you done enough of that? Have you allowed yourself enough time, space, and an ability to say, attaboy, attagirl? Imagine your warrior integrated with your lover. You will fight for love. You will fight for peace. You will fight for those who can't fight for themselves. You will do the hard work for those that will never say thank you to you. Boy, wouldn't that make sense? How many of us right now have a cause or a potential opportunity where we can fight for somebody, do things for people who might not be able to do it for themselves, and it wouldn't matter if we ever got any recognition for it at all? Why aren't we doing that? It's because our warrior is disempowered. We haven't been able to balance it to allow it to use the other archetypes, allows it to use our other energies, our other experiences to take ourselves to the new level, to the next level. Does that make sense? So strategic reflection. We need to take some time to look at our days. Many of us are too busy. I talk to people all the time and I tell them about the 2 hours of meditation each day. Oh my God, 2 hours of meditation. Are you kidding? I can't. There's no way. I don't have 2 hours. I can promise you, if you're not taking 2 hours, you will be forced into 2-hour sessions that you didn't want to be a part of. They're where you argue in life, where you get frustrated in life, where you are doing things that you don't want to do. That's what happens if you don't take the time for you. Somebody else has got a better plan for you, and it's not a plan for you, it's a plan for that. Imagine being able the warrior to invoke the magician. What does a magician do? Snaps their fingers and solutions come. Imagine who could best use a magical insight? An empowered warrior. Could you imagine being able to end the battle before it even begins? Imagine if the warrior invoked the sovereign, right? And sometimes we hear about it in our military, power by strength. What if you were so strong as a warrior? What if you were so enabled as a warrior? What if you were so empowered and in strategic thinking, in loving solutions, in empowered opportunities, that you never had to raise a hand, that you never had to risk life and limb because you were so strong? And you find more long-term solutions rather than battle. You find building. Is this helping? I hope it is. We also talk about inside of the program, we're going to talk about using the NEST program, the neuroenergetic self-sculpting, where you're going to use tapping. One of the big things about the warrior is a very physical part of our existence. So when we do tapping and we understand the power of understanding and opening up these meridians, it's absolutely incredible what happens. Understanding the words we say, the neuroencoding. As you start to become aware of the words that you say and how it reacts and responds in your body, you're going to understand how you get stuck and how you stick yourself in these particular corners. And then also the power of self-talk. Self-talk is what we need to use. And if you read any book or listen to any author on personal success, they'll use the term auto-suggestion. We need to be more in charge of what we are suggesting to our conscious mind, because our subconscious mind is the gateway to this. Our conscious mind is the gateway to the subconscious mind. And everything that we're saying is programming our subconscious mind. And when we become aware of the results we currently have in this moment, the results your warrior currently has in this moment, it's because of disempowering self-talk. It is. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not tall enough. I don't have enough money. When's it going to be my chance? What's going to be my break? All happening at a subconscious level. You're not even aware these words are being spoken. They are just a pattern that's running. The subconscious mind doesn't accept or reject anything as positive or negative. It just accepts everything as is. And that's the formula it runs. So imagine being able to balance these archetypes: the warrior, the sovereign, the lover, and the magician. What if you had endless discipline? What if you had clear vision and purpose? What if you had intelligence and you had compassion and you had motivation? What if you were able to act on the wisdom and the strategies that you have available to you? The challenge is that we have to overcome overwhelm. We got to prioritize our tasks, break down our goals, and celebrate our small wins. Now, imagine if you are one of these four energies. Imagine if you had to create priorities for the sovereign, and priorities for the lover, and priorities for the magician, and priorities for the warrior. That's what causes a lot of people to burn out, is they're trying to adapt and adopt based upon each of these individuals versus understanding that they are the whole, that they are the complete. It's like having your car, knowing that you're using all four tires at the same time, unless you're a little wild driver and sometimes a wheel loses contact with the pavement. For most of us, that's not going to ever be an option. So you become the driver of the wheels. You become the driver of your archetypes, the driver of your personalities. Again, I'm using archetypes here because it's important to understand that every personality test you've ever taken divides you based upon your responses into four unique quadrants. I don't know about being the disciplined or the intuitive or the caregiver or the strategic. I like when I learned about Jung and the shadow archetypes and the shadow warriors and the shadow self, understanding that I can truly understand what it means to be one of these archetypes. So that being said, what I'm going to do now is we're going to go into some of what it feels like to be the disempowered lover, the magician, or the sovereign, so that you can help understand how you can activate or at least become aware, right? If you go to a doctor and you want to feel better, you got to tell them your symptoms. So it's important that we understand these symptoms before we go give you a cure, give you an opportunity for a cure. That being said, a couple of things to reconnect with your inner strength. We all hear about physical training, activity, visualization. Visualization is one of the most powerful tools that Dennis Wheatley is one of the one of the aforementioned keys of individuals who has helped Olympic athletes with their visualization. It's such a powerful tool. And as we go through, could you imagine doing visualization techniques inside the course for the lover? What would you visualize as a lover versus as a sovereign, as a magician versus a warrior? It's important that you realize how definite you can get in your visualization based upon where you need to be and based upon where you're currently at. Understanding affirmations. We're going to use brain talk inside of the training that allows us to not only deliver a message, but understanding that if that message is the archetype of the sovereign, based upon the goal that it's set, do we need more lover, more warrior, more magician? And we incorporate those languages in dual talk, in left ear and right ear, as well as the main focus. So all of that is to happen inside of the course, but let's get through and let's talk about these particular scenarios. So I'm going to stop sharing here, and I'm going to open up another presentation that'll help us experience a little bit more. So let's look at the disempowered. Where's the lover? This was a big one for me. And what I wanted you to experience is this idea of, let me share over here. Share screen. There we go. So the disempowered lover archetype. But do me a favor, just take a big breath. There's a lot of activity right now, and there's a lot of energy going on inside of your brain, inside of your body. And I just want you to get kind of centered again. I don't want the resistance there. I don't want the anxiety to be there. Just take a big breath. And if you've got some water, we're activating a lot of energy and neural networks in the brain, some new neural networks. Take a drink of water. Okay, shake it out, roll your shoulders, move your body, because you can get into a trance. And what I mean by trance is that you become so focused on all of the things you don't have that your body literally begins to lock up. I simply want you to become aware. Say to yourself, I'm becoming aware of my potential. That's what you're really doing. This isn't to paint you into a corner and go, look, this is how you are, this is why you are, this is what you did. This is to say, if I know the recipe that's not working, I can start to create a new recipe. Say that. If I know a recipe that's not working, I can create a new recipe. And I'm okay with that. So, the disempowered archetype of the lover. Sometimes we distort positive qualities of connection and passion, leads to dysfunction in relationships and emotional well-being. How many of us know that, right? So, over-dependency and neediness. Now, I want you to also think, because listen, take a big breath. I also want you to think of some people in your life, maybe business partners, maybe romantic relationships, maybe your spouse. I want you to look at this not to fix them, to understand them. Not to go, oh, I was on a webinar today and you're a disempowered lover. I would not encourage that. But what I would offer you is the idea that you could become aware enough that you know that their lover is wounded. Okay? So, external validation. Disempowered lovers become overly dependent upon others for their approval and their affection. Now, hey, listen, I've been here. This is why I can teach this stuff. I'm not teaching theory. I do not teach theory. I teach reality in 99.99999% of the time because it's happened in my life. And one of the things I've learned from one of my mentors is the best people that you can serve are the ones you just were. So I've been married, blessed. This is our 25th year of marriage. I've got that kind of locked in, but I can tell you the pain from previous relationships doesn't ever seem to go away. The sting might be less, but the memory seems to hang on. So this is where I get some of this from, and through research and through psychology. So clinginess, this leads to clingy behavior and codependency on relationships. Some of us, my mom was an alcoholic. We were given the term, I was given the term, my two other brothers and I and my father were given the term codependents. and they said we should go to codependency class. I think I went to one. But understanding that there's some relationships that we're not even a part of anymore, yet we still have a codependency of. Does that make sense? There's things I could still blame my mom on. My mom's been gone for 13 years. There's things I could blame that's codependency. So if you know people who are blaming others or other situations that have long since passed, it might be that their lover is still wounded, right? Loss of self. What does that mean? What does that sound like? Individuals sacrifice their own needs to keep partners happy. I think after COVID and a few other things that have happened, I think this is a big part of it. So if you become aware of this, if you know someone like this, if this might be you, understand that you can empower your lover. There's ways to empower this so that this doesn't keep happening, or so that you can overcome it. How many of us have ever gone for a scoop of ice cream and ate the half gallon, seeking excess, overindulge in sensual experiences or entertainment? There's some people, I want to say it's a taboo topic. I don't think it's taboo if it's that rampant. People are addicted to porn online. All of these things to understand that overindulgence is overindulgence. And it's a wounded lover. Addiction to pleasure, right? Well, some of the things maybe they go do thrill-seeking things all the time, but yet when they come back, they're never truly satisfied, right? And then there's the escape, a way to avoid the discomfort and the pitfalls, a way to not have to feel anymore. Does that make sense? Recreational drug use might be a way to just escape. Listen carefully, if life was so amazing, and it can be, why would you need a mask to deal with the life you currently have? Well, that's the way everybody is. Well, that's the answer that everybody gets. It doesn't have to be that way. Fear of rejection, insecurity, right? We all know these. The question is are we willing to admit that maybe one or a lot of these are us? Over-attachment, sabotage. How many of us sabotage ourselves before we get started in business? Doesn't have to be in a romantic relationship. It's that we wouldn't want to change our identity to how we love life in a new way. If you reached your goal, your target, would there be more love in your life? For those of you that have been around me long enough, you know that when I ask the question, hey, you've got a big goal there, are you ready for the love? When I sit down with CEOs and company owners of network marketing companies that I'm asked to come in and consult with, one of the first questions I ask is, are you ready for the love? If you currently have 10,000 distributors in your company and you want to go to 500,000, do you realize sometimes the corporate owners resist the emotion of being loved, of being on stage and people coming up and saying, oh my God, you're the best, amazing, I love you, thank you for changing my life, thank you for saving my family. And they literally don't know what to do with that energy. And they sabotage the company. I've been around for 26 years in the profession, 24 years actively building. Emotional instability. Disempowered lovers become overwhelmed by their feelings, leading to instability. Again, I offer you to become aware of this, of some of the people around you, some of the people you're in business with. Mood swings, relationship challenges, make it difficult to maintain stable relationships. You know anybody who jumps company to company to company to company to company? It doesn't seem like that would be a loving relationship, but that's where they go. That's how they operate. Idolization of love. Unrealistic expectations. Oh my God, you said you'd do this. This would be perfect. Real life disappointments. Unrealistic standards. Well, I expect you to be here every day at 5 o'clock, blah, 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 blah. I expect you to be to every meeting. I expect you to be at every meeting. I expect you to do the presentation. I expect you to sponsor one person a day, blah, blah, blah. And then constant seeking, right? This idea that I'm in constant searching. I got a glass of water. I need another glass of water. Again, I got water. I need another water. And you're never enjoying the moments. Here's a big one with a disempowered lover. That external validation. I need you to love me so I can love me. It's why groups and organizations are powerful. Facebook communities. I go there to get information. I go there to get recognition. I go there to get love. I like a lot of people's stuff, so they see me liking them, and it feels good that I like their stuff, but why don't they like my stuff? Insecurity. When external validation fails, they become anxious and insecure. You ever know that? I posted this and nobody liked my stuff. Hey, would you guys go like my stuff? Would you guys go like my stuff so other people see liking it and maybe they'll like it? Ouch. Dependency leads to over-resilience, over-reliance on others for emotional support. Hey, how come you didn't like my stuff? You didn't call me back. What are you doing? Where are you? And then what is the lover? The lover, if you're expressing and empowered, you're going to be on the edge. We call it vulnerability. See, all too often we avoid vulnerability. We don't want anybody to get to know us, to get to know our bumps and bruises and our moles and our old stories. And so we protect and we become too clingy to the things that we don't want anybody to know. So we don't share them. We don't do anything with them. We don't let ourselves be out there. Then we isolate. Don't go to meetings. We don't show up on calls, and we don't talk to anybody anymore. Nobody really wants to do this business. Nobody really wants to be a friend of mine. Listen, this page, it's me in a nutshell. We look at people who are on the stage, and I've stood on stage in 30 plus countries and been translated into over 40 different languages, my conversations, 5-time best-selling author, MC of major corporate events. And yet I can tell you this one, because of the way I was raised and now my understanding of how I got here, these are all huge. These are all absolutes for me. The avoidance, the protection, the isolation. Sometimes you ever know somebody who's funny at a lot of things because they don't want you to do any diving into them. So we go after the emotional. You build up a tolerance. How many of us know that somebody who's an alcoholic, who maybe when they started could drink 5 beers and be okay, and you're like, wow, they've got a tolerance. And then it gets up to a 12-pack, an 18-pack, a 24-pack, and you're like, how are you even standing? It's because in order to get to the point to where we can cause a euphoria, where we can have a feeling of exhilaration, we have to keep pursuing more and more and more and more. Know anybody like that? And it only leads to temporary satisfactions, temporary highs, followed by very low satisfactions. And then it's the cycle. It's this building of tolerance, right? It takes this much to get me high in life. Could be drugs. Listen, when you're going on a roller coaster ride and you want to go off of the Zooms, or you want to go skydiving or chasing a bear, right, to get that adrenaline going, that is a drug. The body operates on drugs, whether it's external exogenous or endogenous, whether it's endogenous chemicals you create to create the high, the thrill. So if you have a wounded lover and you're trying to find something to love, you will do some pretty sometimes harmful things to get you into that state. So how do we cultivate it? Self-care. Oh, well, that's selfish. I'm going to ask you to change that word to self-full. I'm worthy. Mirror work. One of the hardest things for the lover to do. Hardest things is to do mirror work. Stand yourself in front of a mirror. I'm going to say fully clothed to begin with. Stand yourself in front of a mirror and look into the mirror. Look into the eyes of the mirror. And you will be amazed at what happens. So when you stand and do that mirror work, one of the critical things to do is to be able to sometimes it's just standing there looking in the mirror. It'll be difficult for you to look yourself in the eye. Why? Because you're finally making a connection with yourself. Now imagine doing mirror work for the lover, but also imagine doing mirror work for the warrior, the magician, and the sovereign. It's pretty powerful. And then journaling. I know we always journal. Well, what do I write? What do I write down? If you talk to the disempowered lover, how can I serve you? What am I missing? What are you hurting from? Asking these questions. We go through this in the workshop, in the course. You'll be surprised at some of the downloads and the outpourings that you get. Setting healthy boundaries, pretty clear on that. One of the things is with setting healthy boundaries with ourselves is the chakra work that we do inside the course. Understanding the emotional boundaries, the self-preservation, that's through EFT, self-talk, dual talk, NES, brain talk. I'm just letting you know today that the reason that maybe you know somebody who's struggling, could be you, probably not, somebody else, is how you take care of you and making sure that you put yourself in the highest priority, doing it in moderation, learning to enjoy sensual experiences. Listen, do you ever sit with a candle and just stare at the flame? Do you have your favorite chair that you could sit in, your favorite place? Maybe it's at the beach. Go stick your toes in the sand. Maybe it's closing your eyes and visualizing you're on the side of a mountain. Understanding that the warrior is such a powerful archetype. To blend that with all, because the warrior is the discipline. Blending that with all of the other archetypes is key. And then create a sustainable enjoyment. I'll get the words out. Begin today with understanding that you can begin to fall back in love with yourself. All of this to say is you can do all of this right now. You can begin all of this right now. You can do it yourself method. Enjoy honesty, emotional honesty. Practice emotional honesty helps deepen connections. If you really have a problem with something with somebody, say, hey, listen, I need your help. I feel challenged because of what this is. I may be seeing it completely wrong. I may be missing a key integral part of it. Help me understand why this particular emotion from you to me is causing such discomfort. Help me. Teach me. Maybe I'm totally missing it. Maybe one of my past relationships is put a filter over this current environment. Does that make sense? Is that possible? It sure is. And then active listening. Active listening means put down the phone. Active listening means turn away from the TV and look at it. Have a conversation. What would it feel like? How uncomfortable would it be to sit down at a table and say, hey, listen, I love you and I want to figure out why I'm hurting or why I'm in lack. Grounding romantic fantasies, realistic expectations, mindfulness, acceptance. All of these are not unfamiliar with you. the key is, what might be unfamiliar is that you have the authority to begin to reset the idea, reset the capability. It's about having conversations and deciding from which archetype you are going to have this conversation. And we'll get into more of that as well. The empowered lover has passion, meaningful, joyful connections, balance, pleasure, and discipline, right? And growth, nurturing healthy, incredible conversations. So again, we'll get through that and we go more into that into the workshop. But today is about talking to you about disempowered versions of the archetypes. Tomorrow we'll talk about the empowered versions and how you can activate and work on those. And then if you decide I want to do this better, faster, quicker, you can decide to be a part of the course on the 4 archetypes. So let me share with you one more of the archetypes here real quick. Go back here. We just did that. So let's talk about where our creativity comes from, where we have this ability to see things in a new way. So this one is the magician. The magician is that individual inside of us that has the capability to create, spontaneous. The magician is the one who hears from the mastermind, those what Thomas Paine calls the voluntary visitors. When the disempowered can manifest in when disempowered, the magician can manifest in various ways. This dives into the key dynamics of the shadow magician, examining how manipulation, detachment, cynicism, arrogance, and escapism can emerge when this powerful archetype loses its connection and purpose. Right? So, see if you know anybody as such. The magician, because it has, a lot of times we hear the term gaslighting. Well, the magician is the one who kind of spurs that on. The shadow magician is manipulative, secretive, and deceitful. The shadow magician is the opposite of what the true magician would be like, right? It uses knowledge, right? Doesn't the magician have access to the energetic realm? It uses knowledge to control, deceive, exploit others for personal gain. Now, we would think, well, that would be the warrior. The warrior is in a fight. The magician is to give you instant solutions. And the shadow magician is to give you instant control. Distorts the truth, motivations, right, through suitable manipulation. It's not a very nice person, the disempowered magician. Can be manipulative and deceitful. Got to put my glasses back on to read it. Instead of using knowledge and wisdom for the greater good, they use it to control, deceive. This is why when I work with people one-on-one, there's the course we're going to offer, and then if somebody decides to work one-on-one, I ask them to actually create an agreement that you promise to use this for good. When you understand the power of your archetypes, when you understand the power of you and the capabilities and the capacities that you have for good, you also become aware, because of the law of opposites. Everything is energy. And if you're on this side of energy has to exist. It has to exist. For all of the positive that you are, the negative has to be in place. Doesn't mean you need to use it. People ask me, well, how did you become so good? How are you such an amazing, happy-go-lucky, always caring, always giving? Because I was the opposite. It's hard for some people to believe that. You can't get this good. Nobody knows the misery and the heartache I've been through to be this good. So this is an example of it. This can involve subtle manipulation of situations or emotions to maintain powerful influence. The shadow magician hides behind a veil of secrecy, distorting the truth to serve their own interests. There's a detachment from reality. Here's the key. I want you to understand this. Over intellectualizing. Big word for me. Abstract thinking becomes too abstract and detached from reality, living in the realm of ideas. There's people I know whose magician, their disempowered magician is in full tilt because they come up with ideas and concepts and it's not that they even say it with any intensity or any malintention, any intention to do harm. They are just so convinced of these off the reservation kind of ideas. It's quite peculiar. Another version of this is analysis paralysis. Gets over intellectualization, analyzing every situation, but never taking any action, right? This is a form of perfectionism. And then impractical outcomes. Fails to move forward due to the excess focus on understanding of or perfecting things. Know anybody like this? Might have seen this person in the mirror once or twice. The disempowering magician can become too abstract and detached from reality, living in the realm of ideas without grounding their insights into practical action. I want to, here. You ready? How many of you have ever heard this on a conference call? Good morning, billionaires. Wait, what? Good morning, millionaire. Wait, what? We're not making 50 bucks in our side gig business, and they're coming on and saying, good morning, millionaires, thinking they're inspiring. They don't mean any harm. They don't have a bad intention about it. They want to truly inspire. But this is the deceitfulness of the disempowered magician. See, when we get through these 2 days, you are going to have, I hope, it's my desire, you're going to have an awareness as you listen to people's words. You're going to recognize, are they a disempowered sovereign, an empowered sovereign, a disempowered lover or magician or warrior, or an empowered lover, magician, and warrior? What you're going to find is if the statistics are the way they are, where most people, 80% of the population, are struggling paycheck to paycheck, and if all of the personal development gurus say that we need to think about it, and we bring about it, so what they're currently thinking about and thinking about, they're bringing about, wouldn't it make sense that they're operating from one of their disempowered archetypes? Maybe a combination of disempowered archetypes. Maybe they have a great personality. Maybe they're a great magician and they come up with great ideas all the time. Then why aren't they coming up with great ideas for themselves? What if they always have to give? Well, that could be the wounded lover, right? There's a complexity to understanding human nature that as you dive into this, you will have a PhD of awareness of when you're talking to another human being, of how to understand where they are. And maybe you can reach out to them where they're at, right? What's one of the most powerful things they say in marketing? Be where your customer's at and then take them on a journey. The challenge is that if I'm a wounded lover and I want to go talk to a wounded warrior, but I need love. So it's so critical to understand all of these combinations so that you can be present for them when they need you. Cynicism, skepticism, delusionment with life, loss of connection. The magician loses connection to higher wisdom and meaning. How many of you know, or let me ask you this, how many of you know somebody that they know exactly what they need to do next? They know they've done it before. They know exactly what to do next, but they choose not to do it. Pessimistic. Adopts a skeptical, well, I don't know if that'll work. I don't know if that's any good. I'm probably not good enough. That probably would work for you. They dismiss new ideas. Closed-mindedness. Yeah, but no, I've tried that. That makes sense. I've tried that. I've done that before. Yeah, that doesn't work. Retreat into negativity. I'm just, yeah, no, that won't work for me. I'm not good enough. I've tried that before. This is a disempowered magician. When the magician loses their connection to higher wisdom and meaning, they can become cynical and delusioned with life. Instead of being open to the mystery and transformation, not change, transformation, they adopt a skeptical, pessimistic view of the world. They'll dismiss new ideas and possibilities as impractical, impossible, retreating into the mindset of defeatism. And I'm not even sure how to say that word. Nihilism, like denial. I don't know. That's a new word for me. So here's a question. Is it possible that a lot of the people we talk to in our business, if you're in the business of the side gig hustle, you're in a part-time income model stream, talking about your wellness or your productivity or your programs, isn't it possible that this negativity that you see where they don't believe, they become cynical, that their magician has gotten their butt kicked? You follow me? The person who said yes to your meeting probably was a sovereign and said, yes, I want more in my life. I want more energy in my life. I want more goodness in my life. I want more health in my life. I want more wealth in my life. Then the person who showed up to take action, doesn't it sound like a defeated magician? I've tried this before. I don't know if this is ever going to work. This is my first time. Oh my God, every time I try something new, nothing works. What if you knew how to speak to a defeated magician? What if you knew how to speak to a wounded warrior or a broken-hearted lover? Do you think you might be able to have a better conversation, a more practical, more motivating, more productive conversation? All right, back to the disempowered magician. They have a superiority complex. They view themselves as superior due to intellect and insight. The magician has gained access to wisdom, to the ether, to the other realms. Does that make sense? If we look at it from the magical standpoint. So they can be totally elite, totally, what's the word? Where they make somebody feel inferior. They can act with superiority, a dismissive attitude. You don't know what you're doing. You're not good enough. And if you have a wounded lover and an egotistical ass of a magician who's trying to protect themselves says you're not good enough, what's your wounded lover going to say? See, you're right. I know I'm not good enough. Do you realize we have to set who we are when we go into every event, every meeting, every presentation, every conversation, any event? What would happen if all of a sudden you sat here from your empowered archetypes listening to this conversation? Might you not be saying, oh, this is good. I didn't know that. I thought everybody was empowered like me. If I understand that there's a good chance I can listen to their words, to their body language, to their physiology, to who they are, to how they are, to what they are, I can understand that I can connect with them and bring them on the journey. A disempowered magician uses an inflated ego to bolster. They use knowledge. How many times have people said, well, tell me about your network marketing business? Is it one of those things and it does this, 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 and this because they researched 5 things on the internet? Is it possible that in their belittling of you, you will now understand that they are a defeated magician and they're using their superiority to make themselves feel better? Does it make sense? The disempowered magician may become consumed by their own knowledge, viewing themselves as superior to others. How many people are superior in their knowledge of their negative aspect of life, saying, I've tried that before, that won't work, and this won't work, and I can't do that? Is this making sense? The defeated or the disempowered magician, their arrogance can make them seem elitist, dismissive of others' perspectives, or obsessed with showing off their intellectual prowess. You ever have somebody jump on one of your Zoom calls and they want to add, here's what's happened to me, here's what I've experienced, here's what I've done in that situation, and yet they're struggling to get by? Do you see where all of this comes from? Do you see how all of this interplays with each other? So showing off their intellectual prowess, instead of using their knowledge for transformation, they use it. Listen, this was me probably 6 years ago. Man, I could shoot you down from 1,000 yards away and thought I was doing good, thought I was helping, thought I was being of value. It didn't work out that way. So I learned to transform, how to use my knowledge and to be available, to see if I can't inquire how far and how fast you want to go to the side of empowerment. That makes sense? It's a tough one. Escapism, avoiding reality through fantasy or magic. Fantasy world play a lot of online games, avoiding real world challenges, distractions. It's okay to get into books, but are they books of empowerment or are they books of distraction? The romance novels. Hobbies are good. The key is, are you doing them to avoid something? Are you doing them allowing your to do manual work, to do manual manipulation that is almost non-thinking? It's cathartic. And you allow yourself to expand your capabilities and capacities while your hands are no longer idle and they're doing things. That's a good thing. Drawing, for me, doodling is one of those things. Illusion over reality, retreats into illusion instead of transforming. Uses fantasy, living in a fantasy world. Know anybody like that? I just wish things were better. From inner wisdom, this is a big one. The disempowered from inner wisdom and spiritual disconnection. The magician becomes disconnected from their inner wisdom. If you've ever been on one of my morning calls and people say, oh, I don't know the answer to that. First thing I'll say is, please refrain from using I don't know. Say, I'm curious to find the answer. What I'll typically say is, I know you don't know, but your higher self does. What do you think the answer is? And magically, literally magically, they begin to come up with an answer. Now we can have a dialogue. You speak, I listen, I speak, you listen. Not two monologues that bump into each other. Does this make sense? Loss of insight. Loses touch with the transformative energy that drives them. Do you understand the power it takes to forget how good you are? You forget the power it takes to remember how good you are. And then once you do, sometimes we get very cynical. We get very skeptical about our own capabilities and capacities. The magician archetype is closely tied to intuition and deeper spiritual insight. When the magician becomes disconnected from their inner wisdom, they lose touch with transformative energy. All of us say, I want to change, I want to change, I want to change. I believe, from my experience, when I work with people, they truly want to transform. And the magician has access to that transformative wisdom and transformative energy that can drive you. This leads, when you're not using that, well, nothing ever works for me. Nothing's ever good for me. I can't ever get a break. Leads to cynicism, skepticism, or escapism. The magician no longer trusts the process of transformation or their own ability to create meaningful change. Fear of failure, perfectionism, and paralysis. We all know that the highest form of procrastination is perfection. Fear of love, perfection, inaction, right? Endless analysis and planning. Oh, my brain is resetting. There's a lot going on here. We've done a lot. This is already 9. Is this? No. Yeah, 12:30. We started at 11. We're already 90 minutes in. This is a lot. Take a big breath. Shake your body out. Oh, the brain can only usually last 20 minutes. So you may want to watch this on replay. So, yeah, this is a lot. And we're only to the magician. We did the lover, the magician, and the warrior. So the next would be the sovereign. The magician often has fear of failure. Think about this for a second. We want something we've never had. So we launch an arrow into the universe. We launch an arrow into the Godscape and say, I want X. I want a house for my parents. I want my debt paid off. I want a new car. I want a new rank in my business. We launch these arrows of these goals out into the universe, into the God sphere. And we say, I'm worthy because the person next to me told me. Usually happens at events. Then we get home, we get into the quiet, we crawl into our bed, and we're asked to read our goals. And we're asked to read our dreams and look at our affirmations. And in the quiet of our own God space, we no longer hear God. We hear our ego edging God out. We hear our community of we're not good enough. We're not big enough. We're not strong enough. And we fear that our insights or strategies won't work in the real world, leading them to remain in the realm of ideas and not executions. This perfectionism can lead to inaction. I know it's done it to me. They're constantly waiting for the perfect moment, for the perfect plan, which never comes. Overuse of knowledge. This is the magician. This is the disempowered magician for control, ego-driven manipulation, power dynamics. Do you know anybody who's ever been on stage at an event who uses information like this, uses their overuse of knowledge, big words to control things? They use intellect and insight to manipulate and control others, to make us feel, oh my gosh, I need to be at their feet. Does that make sense? They drive an inflated ego. They think that the paycheck makes them. And for many of us, we want to be around them. Now, how many of us have known very wealthy people who don't pay for anything? I got it. I'll take care of that. I'll be the one. No, let me get that. Because we want them to remember us. Have they even remembered themselves? Dominance. Seek to dominate situations through cleverness. Know anybody who uses sarcasm to control a situation? Could be a defeated magician. This making sense? Misuse of knowledge. Uses knowledge for personal gain rather than positive change. Ouch. That was me in the beginning of network marketing, 4 years ago. Man, I could tell you everything, why it was the best thing. My first year was $80,000. Hang on, wait for it. In debt. Because I was using this one here particularly. I didn't know network marketing. I came out of the business world. I had 7 different corporations, businesses, probably close to 100 employees across the different companies. And I misused knowledge to try to scare you, to try to motivate you, to try to employify. I know that's not a word. Employify you so that you would work for me. I didn't realize it was a volunteer army in the beginning. When the magician uses their intellect and insight to manipulate or control others, it's often driven by an inflated ego or desire to maintain power. The disempowered magician may feel superior due to their knowledge and seek dominate. The disempowered magician may feel superior due to their knowledge and seek to dominate situations through cleverness, sarcasm, humor, rather than empowering others or creating positive change. Remember, the highest form of intellect is humor. The one who controls the humor controls the room? Are they controlling the humor through disempowering humor stunts? Man, there's a lot to pay attention to. Overwhelming complexity. Retreat into thinking. The magician becomes overwhelmed with life's complexities. Now, remember, we're all part of these. This is just one version of us, a quarter of us, less than that, an eighth of us, when we start to look at the magician, male or female, right? As you're listening to this, is it possible that some of these traits, characteristics, personifications of the magician could be either male or female related? This is a big course. This is a big understanding, yet it's pretty simple in its nature. We're not going into the heuristics or the hedonics of the conversation. We're simply basing it on the reality that there's 4 primary quadrants that people operate in. And then how do we understand who the combination is and which one is the most dominant in the person we're speaking to? Is it possible to realize that situationally an archetype could be more prevalent, more present based upon the situation, based upon who they are as a personality? That's the part that's magical about this whole thing. Retreats into intellectualism as a coping mechanism, right? Studies, maintains, never really gets anything done, all of that hodgepodge. Detachment, endless analysis, but remains removed from the emotional and practical realities. One of the things you're going to find as you take on your journey is that there is going to be a need to allow, a need to understand, a need to permit emotional awarenesses in your growth. The magician thrives on understanding complex systems. When overwhelmed by the complexity of life, they may retreat into intellectualism by way of avoiding the messiness of life. Know anybody ever been like that? This can result in detachment, where they analyze and they go into analysis paralysis. Grounding knowledge in practical action. Balance insight in action. Become aware of what it is and go try it. Again, sometimes on the morning calls, I'll talk to people and they'll say, well, I don't know what to do. I go, well, if you could try something in the next 24, 48 hours, what would be the 2 biggest things you would try? I don't know. I don't know. I know, but if you did know, what would you do? They'd say, well, I try this and this. So that's insight in their own mind. And then there's 2 things they can take action on. They can only take action on one at a time. So I ask, which one would you want to take action on first? You can do this right now. You can become aware. The challenge is that there's so much we sometimes forget the things we know we need to do. Take risks, trust insights. Some of us, the risk is going live on a Instagram or a Facebook video or YouTube video, and that's a huge risk. Yet to many, it's, what are you talking about? There's no risk at all. Any first thing where we become exposed is a risk. And where the magician is involved, the magician is supposed to have the solution. The lover, it's okay to be vulnerable. I don't know. The warrior won't do it because it's a fight. I don't even know if I can win the fight. There's no fight. This making sense? Goal setting. Using techniques like goal setting and time management, understanding that we can only manage our energy and time, but putting down the tasks, doing the doing the Ben Franklin list, right? Put it out, write everything down you need to do, organize it. A's are the priorities. Everything can't be an A. A's and then B's and then C's, and then numbering, even prioritizing it a second time. Take all of the A's. Which one is the first A? This goes back to Brian Tracy. Eat that frog. You got to do the most difficult thing. And usually your number 1 is the thing you don't want to do at all. So using some goal setting techniques and time management inside of the course, we walk you through that. There's an accountability scenario to it. Then there's the part of concrete steps. There's certain things. If you're going to get up at 5 a.m., you get your butt up at 5 a.m. You want to be part of the 5 a.m. club, be part of the 5 a.m. club. You want to do your 10 gratitudes every day, you do your 10 gratitudes every day. There is no maybe. It's do or do not. So the realm of the magician, I know we've gone over. We're going to keep going here for a little bit. The balance, the insight with action instead of staying in the realm of ideas. They need to take steps. This is where we need the discipline of the what? Imagine a blended warrior magician, a magician with the warrior secondary that they can get into action. Now, we can take this to a whole nother level with a blended magician, warrior, then which is next? Sovereign or lover. Because that determines the flow of ideas. We're not going to go, we go into that a little bit. That's a more advanced concept, is being able to describe and identify each of those characteristics in each of those individuals, but to see what the flow is. Because wouldn't you agree that a magician, warrior, sovereign, lover is different than a magician, warrior, lover, sovereign? This is where, when you begin to understand you can instantly become aware of who you're speaking to and how best to serve them. Reconnecting, how do you get the magician back? Meditation, mindfulness. What does it mean to be mindful? Sadhguru says mindfulness is staring at an ant for 2 hours, looking at a leaf for 3 hours. Oh, I could never do that because your mind is full of other crap. And one of the things you'll see continuously, journaling, the art of moving your hand and creating something on a page does something far significant than typing on a keypad. So the magician's power comes from their connection to their inner wisdom and spiritual insight. Practices such as meditation, mindfulness, journaling can help reconnect through the transformation process. Engaging in spiritual practices, exploring mysticism, and balancing with balance helps the magician stay connected. So, balancing intellectualism with emotionalism, emotional honoring, recognizing and honoring emotions alongside intellect. How does it make you feel when you think of these cool ideas or these deepening thoughts? Connect more deeply with others through emotional understanding. Be where they're at. Imagine if you're a empowered sovereign speaking to an disempowered lover. Oh, come on. Wouldn't you hear words like, come on, this would be so good for you. You'd be so good at this. It's not disappointing. It's not trying to discriminate. It's not trying to make you feel bad. But if you're a wounded lover hearing, this would be so good for you, you could do this, do you think you'd get better or you'd get worse? And then the integrated approach, right? Engaged in life's messiness in a more integrated way. The magician often relies on their intellect, but they also need the honor. They also need honor to honor their emotions and their emotions of others, which we don't always do. Cultivating emotional intelligence, EQ, allows the magician to connect more deeply with those around and recognize that not everything can be solved through logic or strategy. They can help the magician avoid being cynical, disattached, and instead engage with life's messiness in a more integrated process. Using empowerment, shift to empowerment, use insights to empower others, not control them. Practice humility, recognize true power in guiding others to their own insights. And shift from personal gain to service orientation. We all do that. We all want to serve. We all want to bring value to others, yes? The challenge is that when we become harmed or hurt or bleeding, right? What's that phrase? Why are you bleeding over people who never cut you? This is the disempowered side of our archetypes. The empowered magician usually uses their insights to empower others, create creating transformation, not change, transformation through shared wisdom rather than seeking to control or manipulate. This requires the magician to practice humility, recognizing that true power lies in guiding others toward their own insight rather than dominating the situation. Know anybody who's truly brilliant, capable, has amazing information to offer, and they still dominate the conversation? Shifting from a mindset of personal gain to one of service can help restore balance. And grounding in spirituality practice, mindful action, fully aware of these: physical, move around, get out, go for a walk, connect, right? Send text to those you love. Sometimes the magician can escape into fantasy or the esoteric knowledge as a way of avoiding the real world. To counteract this, the magician should be working on grounding their spiritual and intellectual pursuits in reality. Practices like mindful action and engaging in the physical world, nature, walks, physical projects can help you bridge the gap between higher. How many of us have a pet that when we get around them, they can truly bring us back to a centering and a grounding faster than they can wag their tail or chirp their chirp? It's because they're not unassociated with their highest self. They are being their best version of themselves. And when they see us, funny how we bring it out in them. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's the lover, the magician, and the warrior. For those of you that may need to jump off because I've gone way over time, hopefully this is of value. I'm going to go through the sovereign so that they're all in the same series, the same audio, the same, and you can fast forward to each one and figure out which one you are or where you are. I'm going to go through the disempowered sovereign. So if you need to jump off, know that it's on the recording, know that it's on YouTube. It'll be in the dashboard of the unlearnme.live site. So you can go there and you can watch the video. It'll be on the side in the resources. It'll also be a blog post in the bottom. So just one of this is of value, and two, you're not quite sure what you needed to do. Type that in the chat if it's a one of value. Yeah, it's a lot. Yes, it's intense. Shouldn't be surprised that it's that it's like that. Because that's just who I is, right? So I just want you to become aware of that. So let me do one more thing here. All right, that's in present mode. Let's go over here to share screen. Where is share screen? There it is. All right, last one. The disempowered sovereign. Again, the sovereign archetype represents leadership, order, and stability. However, the disempowered sovereign can fall into unhealthy patterns of negatively impact their leadership and those they lead. We're going to talk about the key dynamics of the sovereign and the reason this disempowerment and strategies and how to reclaim the balance. Tyranny and autocrat. I know I type it, but I don't know how to say it. Autocracy. Autocrat. I know how to say it. So it's the shadow king and queen. Autocracy. There we go. I knew how to say it. So a disempowered sovereign. This is the king or the queen. Imagine a kingdom and imagine the king or queen feeling unworthy, feeling disempowered. They still have the title of sovereign. Can you imagine some of the damage that can be done inside of the kingdom when they are not feeling or acting at their best version of themselves? This making sense? So a disempowered sovereign may become tyrannical or autocratic. See, that was easy. Exerting excessive control over others. This shadow form manifests as micromanaging, making harsh decisions and dominating others to maintain power. The sovereign, the shadow sovereign, operates from fear of losing control, being overthrown, or appearing weak. Then that makes perfect sense. If you've watched GOT, Game of Thrones, you saw some of that as well. Key characteristics include being controlling, rigid, and unyielding. An example of a leader who refuses to delegate tasks, feels threatened by others' success, or rules through intimidation. Excessive control. In the real world, in our world, might be micromanaging, dominating the behavior, harsh decisions, unfair, severe rulings, and actions motivated by insecurity. This happens a lot in network marketing. I'll probably get in trouble for saying that. It happens a lot in network marketing. Weak or indecisive leadership, loss of authority. On the opposite end, the disempowered sovereign may fall into indecision or passivity. Instead of embracing their leadership role, they become paralyzed by self-doubt, second-guessing decisions, avoiding responsibility. This often occurs when a sovereign is overwhelmed by the weight of the responsibility or the fear of making wrong decisions. Isn't that interesting? Key traits include being indecisive, hesitant, overwhelmed. An example is a leader who avoids critical conversations, constantly seeks approval or hands off power to subordinates. The sovereign begins to question their abilities and their judgment. Important choices are delayed. The sovereign starts passing off duties to others, shrinking their role. Abdication of responsibility. This is why sometimes organizations and countries collapse, right? Disconnected from people, lack of empathy. A healthy sovereign rules for the benefit of other people, while when disempowered, they may lose touch with the needs and emotions of those they lead. They lose touch with the needs and the emotion. I forget who it was. Marie Antoinette. Let them eat cake. Everyone's starving. Let them eat cake. That was like the biscuit. That was the throwaway food of the rich was cake. Well, let them just eat cake. No one had no cake. This disconnection can lead to selfish decisions, neglect of others' emotional welfare, and becoming detached and cold. The sovereign begins to see themselves as separate or superior to those they lead. Key traits include being self-centered, disconnected, unempathetic. An example of a manager who ignores employees' concerns, makes unilateral decisions without input, or shows no concern for the personal lives of those they lead. Starting to know some self-centered, disempowered sovereigns. Starting to see some of those in your world, possibly. Stagnation and fear of change, rigid and stubborn. This could be us, stubborn to try new things, rigid to try. I've tried that. That doesn't work. Yeah, I haven't really tried it. A disempowered sovereign clings to the status quo, resisting innovation and transformation. Result is becoming outdated, irrelevant, and obsolete. Would you say Blockbuster was a stubborn sovereign? The CEO was a stubborn sovereign, right? Didn't it make sense? And now you see where CEOs take on these ideals. Key traits include stubborn, outdated, inflexible. An example of a company leader who refuses to adopt changes, clings to old, resistance to change, fear of the unknown, loss of relevance. This happens in sports figures too, doesn't it? Doesn't it happen all around? The disenfranchised sovereign. You're like, man, they had to get it. They had the ability, they had the skill, they had the capability. Why did they lose it? Because they weren't willing to adapt and adopt. Overburdened by responsibility, crushed under the crown. This happens in our industry of network marketing, where somebody goes from 5 people to 500 people, and all of a sudden their whole business collapses because they think they got to take care of 500 people. No, they have to manage a vision that is so clear and so big that 500 people can fit into it. The sovereign has a duty of overseeing the entire kingdom. When disempowered, they may feel overwhelmed by the weight of the responsibilities, leading to burnout, depression, avoidance. They may believe that the success or failure of the entire kingdom rests on their shoulders. It doesn't, but it can cause isolation, taking on too much. Key traits include being overwhelmed, isolated, experiencing burnout. An example of a CEO who's constantly stressed, working excessive hours without delegation, isolates themselves from their teams, leading to emotional exhaustion. Starting to see where maybe you've worked for some people like this. Disconnected from inner self, loss of authenticity. How many of us know people who have lost their authenticity? A sovereign becomes disempowered when they lose connection to their true self or higher purpose. If they're leading for wrong reasons, power, ego, validation, instead of authentic passion and purpose, they can easily become lost. Without clear inner compass, DMP, definite chief aim, definite major purpose, the sovereign may either become rigid or authoritarian and collapse under the weight of the responsibility. They lose their identity. They wind up with external motivations and lack of direction. This might be you right now. I know it's been me many times throughout my life. I've really had to have a mentor kind of kick me in the cheeks and get me squared up. Overwhelming responsibility, failure due to delegate. Pretty simple. Maintaining an order, overseeing their kingdom. When they don't trust others they try to bear all the weight themselves, they risk burnout. You can read the things on the slide there. Symptom: micromanagement, impact, team frustration. Solution: delegate tasks. Lack of trust, stunted team growth. Build trust. Overwork, burnout. Prioritize self-care. Fear of losing power, insecurity. Insecurity is common cause, and the sovereigns fall into the shadow state. When the sovereign doubts their worthy authority, they may swing to extremes. Anybody know that? So they're constantly being vigilant. They become overly watchful, micromanagement. They power hoard. They're reluctant to share any of the power, and the defensive posturing, overreacting to perceived challenges to authority. Right? If you're a hammer, everything's a nail. If you think you're being attacked, then everything is an attack. Reclaiming the empowered sovereignty. An overview. Reconnect with your inner version. Foster connections with others. To reclaim empowered sovereignty, it's essential to reconnect with the authentic leadership qualities inside of you and bring balance into your life and into leadership. So become aware. Learn what is the definition of trust mean to you? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? Do you have a definition for trust? Do you have a definition for empathy? Do you have a definition for innovation? Because if you don't, then you might be operating from a disempowered version of anything. Isn't this cool? Powerful stuff. I hope it works for you. Reestablish connection and purpose. Invoke inner clarity. Here again, this is for the sovereign. Self-reflection. Meditation, journaling. Clarify your vision. What is your definite chief aim? What is your definite major purpose? If your sovereign doesn't know what you want for the kingdom, then anything is game. Anything is game. Right? And understanding that being able to align. So which one of the archetypes does the alignment? Is it the warrior? Then you might have a warrior flair to your kingdom. Is it the lover alignment, where sacrifice and it's okay to be stepped on and used and you'll still love it? Or is it the magician, where everything is done instantly and there's no planning and everything has to happen sporadically? Or is it the sovereign? Which archetype governs your vision? And then you've got to ask, is it an empowered archetype or a disempowered archetype? Practice empathy and connection. Invoke the lover. Can you imagine the power behind a sovereign, lover, warrior, magician? Isn't it cool to look at these things this way? Empathy and emotional intelligence are essential for the sovereign to stay connected to those they lead. They can cultivate this by practicing active listening, seeking feedback from others, making decisions that benefit the whole. You have to have a vision of what the whole is, what the entirety is, so that you can determine, play the 7 questions. If this happens, what's the value? Why is that beneficial? What's the value? Why is that beneficial? What's the value, right? This helps them maintain a deep understanding of the needs of the emotions of their kingdom. Don't be trying to run my kingdom if yours has got everybody running out the fences. Work on yours. Delegate and trust others. Invoke the warrior. A balanced sovereign knows they cannot bear the weight of leadership alone. They must trust their warrior. Now, would an empowered sovereign trust a disempowered warrior? Would a powerful you who has clear vision, who has clear intention, who has clear insight, trust the version of you that has no discipline? That's why it's so critical to understand these archetypes. Those who can take action and carry out the vision, let the warrior work with you. Learning to delegate, trust, and empower others will relieve the burden of leadership and prevent burnout. Identify strengths. In business, there's a SWOT model: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, called the SWOT survey, SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Have you done a SWOT analysis on yourself? Google it. You'll be surprised at what you might learn about yourself. So identifying strengths, empowering others, building trust. Embrace adaptability. What the heck is that? Adaptability and innovation invoke the magician. It encourages creativity. It embraces change and transformation. And it is a continuous learning possibility. Does that make sense? Last slide, and then we're done for this session, which has now gone 2 hours. Release the need for control, balance with other archetypes. The sovereign must realize that ultimate control is an illusion. By embracing the flexibility, the magician, the emotional intelligence of the lover, and the strategic action of the warrior, the sovereign can lead from a place of strength without needing to dominate or micromanage. This balance restores them to the true king or queen, the one who rules with wisdom, clarity, and purpose. By integrating these aspects, the sovereign can create a harmonious and thriving kingdom, benefiting all under their leadership. So, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this was valuable. I'd love if you have any questions, reach out, ask. Pretty powerful conversation. Big stuff. We went through a tremendous amount of information. The link will be on here. I would offer you to share this with some folks that you know, right? A lot of times it's hard for us to be the messenger, to be the message. Let you be the messenger, and you can put me in front of them and say, and you might want to share this with your teams. Yes, it's a 2-hour conversation. They can watch it over time. Tomorrow, we will go into the benefits of what happens when you have empowered versions of this. And we'll talk about the course that's available for you to participate in if you'd like. If you're already in and you want to know more about the course, just reach out to me. There is an investment in that, and it's not insignificant. But imagine if you could take the 4 archetypes that you heard today that have a version or one of them being disempowered. What would it mean to your career, your income, and your relationships with an empowered version of just that one archetype? This is the power of understanding human nature, of understanding who we are and how we are. And I've done the archetypes for years now. And I was quite excited to be able to share with you what I shared with you today. So I hope you have an incredible, fun-filled, fact-filled day. I am your head brain training archetype misfits, Sean G. Murphy. I will see you all where? I'll
The
see
next
you all at the next event. Thanks. I appreciate it, Reg. All right, everybody, go have some fun today. There's a lot here, so buckle up, have some fun, and as soon as the links are up and ready, I will post them inside the dashboard. Feel free to share this with people. You might be amazed at how much they thank you for helping them understand who and how they got to where they are and who they